Always look forward to our Thursday Chat with Pat.
Yes, it is always great on Thursdays to have Joan Watson with us. And as you know, I got to see her last week. I actually got to see her. I went to South Bend, and we had a great time. What a wonderful woman. And we are in the last chapter of her book, Making a Pilgrimage, a Companion for Catholics. Welcome, Joni. So good to have you back again.
It's great to be with you, Pat. It was great to be with you in person, but thanks to the technology, the miracle of technology, it's great to be with you on the phone and on the radio as well.
I know. We love having you as our Thursday guest. So we are jumping into the last chapter. And when we talked last week, you said, yeah, I think we could, there's a lot in this chapter. And you're right, there is. So I want to kind of start with the quote that you start with from Pope Francis. Always remember this: life is a journey. It is a path, a journey to meet Jesus. And so certainly the title of this chapter is The Pilgrimage of Daily Living. And I love how you start. The idea that, okay, I've come home from a pilgrimage, now what? And you talk about your time in Rome as a student and how that affected you. So how did it affect you to spend all of that amazing time in Rome and then come back? Because we who travel to Rome only get a little snapshot of that.
Yeah. I was really blessed to be in Rome twice, actually, for extended periods of time in my graduate studies, which is what I mentioned in the book, and then also in my undergrad studies, I was there for a semester as well. Okay. And it's just, you get a completely different experience of the city and of the church because you are able to really soak it in and you're not rushing from place to place. I used to joke that the Pope was my pastor for several months because I heard him every Sunday at the Angelus. But you experience Rome, and Rome has a special place in my heart because of that. It became home, right? Mm-hmm. So when I go back, it's like returning home. But you also experience kind of this extended pilgrimage and this idea that, like, well, I can be holy here.
Right.
I can be holy while on pilgrimage, right? Now, there's the little things we've talked about before, and I talk about in the book, where there's the little inconveniences you have to offer up. And
sure.
It is wearing to live in Rome in a way that you don't realize when you're on pilgrimage. Little things are very difficult, like grocery shopping, and there's no Target. And, things that are we take for granted here are difficult, Yeah. But at the same time, you're just in the heart of the church, and you're surrounded by beauty, and you're on pilgrimage.
Right.
And so just reflecting on, like, coming home, you have these experiences that no one else has had. You are entering back into daily life. And it's there then that the graces you learned and the graces you acquired, I should say, they come into play then in the daily life, because our life is a pilgrimage. And that's what I really hope, that quote from Francis, I think, is so important, because that's what I hope the whole book ends up being about for people, is seeing their lives as a pilgrimage with ups and downs and crosses and joys. And what matters is where we're headed. It doesn't matter where we've been. In some ways, it doesn't matter actually where we are right now, as long as we are getting back on the path and heading towards heaven. And so that time in Rome, I was coming home as ordinary time was ramping up. My last few weeks in Rome were Corpus Christi and all the great feasts after Easter. And then I got back to ordinary time, and I had to ask myself, okay, can I be a saint now in the ordinary?
I love that. And you do mention that concept of that ordinary time. So often we get this feeling that it's just kind of commonplace, that it's nothing special. But yet that's the way the rhythm of life is, correct?
Yeah, and, we get the term ordinary time from ordinalis, the Latin word for numbered. It means that the weeks are numbered, like the 16th Sunday of ordinary time, the 17th Sunday. But even though we don't get it from the English concept of ordinary, I do think we have this kind of sense in ordinary time that we're green vestments. Things are always the same. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to take care of my kids. Nothing special.
Right.
I'm not, seeing the Pope. I'm not walking in and seeing a Caravaggio on the wall, right? It's this ordinary living. But that's where we have to be saints.
Yeah.
It's not about being saints in the those special moments. It's about being saints in the ruts, in the
Yes.
time of the walking of life where you're just like, you have blisters and you just want to stop. That's where sanctity kicks in, right? And that's where, that's where we have to be saints.
And one of the things you talk about in the book, too, in this beginning of this chapter that I love, you make the statement, you have changed, but much of the world has not. And I think so often I did tech retreats, Teens Encounter Christ retreats for 30 years, right? And that was always one of the things that, they're all ramped up for Jesus when they leave. And then they go back to their school and things haven't changed there. And that's really hard to keep that presence of Christ and to bring him into everything you do when things have not changed around you. And one of the things you state in here, which just it clicked, the transfiguration clicked. Now you have come home like Ignatius with a mission. Perhaps you would have liked to stay in Jerusalem or Rome or Fatima or on the road. And I think, doesn't that make sense when Peter said, should we build some tents here so we can all stay here? Because it seemed, it seemed like we are in heaven, right? And I think we get that feel sometimes on a pilgrimage, like you said, everywhere you turn in Rome, you see beauty in the church, and but you get home and you're right back to where where you started sometimes. So how do you kind of remember what you have gained on this pilgrimage and live it out in these ordinary kind of commonplace days?
Yeah. It was very hard for me coming back from my undergrad semester. I was studied in Rome in 2005, and church historians know that the spring of 2005 was a very exciting time in the church because it was the suffering and death of John Paul II and the election of Benedict. And so we came home having experienced this election, this funeral, these ups and these downs, and we were coming home to people who didn't understand. They had watched it on TV maybe, but they didn't understand what we had gone through. Right. And so I think one way we can keep the pilgrimage fire alive is by really praying and processing what the Lord has done for us and why, whether that's through journaling when you're on the trip, whether that's through just a lot of prayer when you get back, and asking the Lord, what do you want from me? We all kind of asked each other that question in 2005 when we were studying over there. Why are we here? And why has the Lord chosen us to be here at this moment? It's not for us alone, but these graces are given to us for others. And that's why I do what I do today, actually. I heard the call of John Paul II that semester, and I went on to study theology because I wanted to share my love for the church and to be open to what the Lord is doing, because that grace was not given to you alone. And so to keep that fire alive, you have to process why the Lord did what he did during those days. And that requires time. That requires prayer. But it wasn't just for you. It was for everyone.
Well, Joni, we are at the end of our time, but I do want to end with this from your writing, because this really touched me. We must cooperate with God's will for us. On pilgrimage, that might mean how well we offer up the sacrifices, how good we are at surrendering to him daily, and how open we are to receiving his answers and gifts. Now, upon returning home, it means how that translates into our ordinary lives.